I could hear the soft hum of conversations before I even stepped fully into the dining room. The crystal terrace was bathed in golden light from chandeliers that must have cost more than my first apartment. The air smelled faintly of roses and warm bread, the kind that melts the moment it touches your tongue. I smoothed the sleeve of my silk emerald blouse, habit, not necessity, and scanned the long mahogany table. That's when I saw it. My seat. Or at least the one I had been invited to. Taken. Karen Mitchell, my old high school frenemy turned somehow family friend, was perched there like it had always been hers. She tossed her blonde hair, laughing at something my cousin Jake had said. No one noticed me lingering in the doorway. No one moved to make space. I inhaled slowly, letting the weight of the moment settle. They still thought I was the same girl who left town with 2 suitcases and a maxed-out credit card. I was deciding between walking out or quietly finding another table when a familiar voice cut through the chatter. Madam CEO, my assistant Vanessa, said, not softly but with the perfect amount of volume to carry across the room. Forks paused midair. Conversations died. Every head turned toward me, and I smiled. Not the polite, forced smile they remembered. This one had teeth. It had been 8 years since I'd last seen most of them. Back then, I was 24, broke, and sitting at another dinner table. The same family crowd, but a cheaper restaurant, peeling wallpaper, and too loud air conditioning. I remember my hands trembling under the table as I unfolded the paper napkin onto my lap. My cousin Jake had just gotten a job at his dad's construction firm, and Aunt Linda kept beaming about it like he'd been crowned king. When she finally looked at me, it was with that polite pity people reserve for stray cats. So, Emily, what's next for you? Still working at that coffee place. The way she said it, coffee place, made it sound like a disease. I'm saving up, I said, forcing a smile. I've got plans. Karen, sitting across from me, smirked over her glass of Chardonnay. Plans are great, she said. But sometimes you have to be realistic, you know? Stability's important. You don't want to end up, she trailed off, letting the silence fill in the insult. The lump in my throat burned. That's when I felt a soft hand on mine, my grandmother's. She slid a pen across the table. It was gold, with a tiny engraving. Write your own story. They don't have to understand it yet, she whispered, so only I could hear. Just make sure you do. That night, I went home to my shoebox apartment, stared at my checking account balance, $147.63, and decided I was done waiting for anyone's approval. The next morning, I typed my resignation letter at that coffee shop counter. By the end of the week, I had sold the few things I owned worth anything: a vintage guitar, a designer bag I'd found at a thrift store, my TV. It wasn't much, but it was enough for the first month's rent in a tiny studio downtown. Enough to start. That first month in the studio apartment was a blur of noise and silence. Noise from the traffic outside, my one cracked window. Silence when the bills came and there was no one to call for help. I bought a refurbished laptop off Craigslist, set it on a wobbly folding table, and told myself I was going to build something from nothing. I didn't know exactly what yet, only that it would be mine. The first break came when I answered a late-night freelance ad for a small marketing job. A boutique candle company needed social media help. I stayed up until 3 a.m. creating a brand strategy, editing photos on free software, writing captions that made wax and wicks sound romantic. When the owner, a woman named Patricia Holt, called to say she'd never had so many orders in 1 week, something shifted inside me. Patricia became my first client and my first mentor. She introduced me to other small business owners, mostly women who had been underestimated themselves. The work was endless. My days started with instant coffee at 6 a.m., my chipped nail polish tapping against the laptop keys until my wrists ached. I learned about SEO, graphic design, contract law, all from free articles and YouTube videos. My friends were Friday night webinars and quiet dinners with myself over takeout noodles. There were rejections, plenty. Clients who promised to pay next month, others who ghosted after I delivered the work. I cried once, in the bathroom of a public library, staring at my tired reflection and wondering if Karen had been right about being realistic. But then there were wins. The first time I hit $1,000 in a week. The first time a client referred me, without me asking. The first time I hired a virtual assistant, Vanessa, who would later become my right hand in everything. With each win, I posted small, safe updates online, excited for a new project, or grateful for my clients. Never numbers. Never titles. Never enough to clue my family into the empire I was quietly building. 2 years in, I had incorporated my own agency. For years in, I had a downtown office with a view of the river. By year 6, we were representing national brands, and I had a team of 20. Still, when my mother would call and ask, "How's work?" I'd just say, "Busy." The truth was too precious to toss into a casual conversation. I wanted the reveal to mean something. And as fate would have it, the perfect moment arrived on a chilly Friday evening at a dinner where my name wasn't even on the seating card. The Crystal Terrace was the kind of place people posted about just to prove they'd been there. Marble floors polished to a mirror shine, champagne flutes so thin they looked like they'd shatter if you breathed wrong, a view of the city's skyline glowing against the evening sky. I walked toward the long table slowly, my heels clicking in steady rhythm against the floor. Every step felt deliberate, measured. Karen was mid-laugh when Vanessa spoke. "Madam CEO, the investors are waiting for your approval on the final contract." Her voice carried, crisp and clear. Heads turned, brows lifted. Whispers started to ripple through the room. I caught Jake's eyes first. Confusion clouded his face like he was trying to do the math in his head. Karen's smirk faltered, replaced by something tighter, sharper. "Emily, CEO?" Aunt Linda asked, her fork hovering in midair. "Yes," I said, stepping closer. "Of Holt and West Media. We're hosting the dinner tonight." The shift in the room was almost audible. The way posture changed, the way glances darted from me to the elegantly printed menu embossed with our company name. "This is your event?" Karen asked, her voice just a little too high. I nodded. Every table, every plate, every glass of wine. My team organized it all for our investors and partners. Vanessa, bless her timing, approached again. "Shall I let the CFO know you'll be joining after you finish here?" "Yes, please." The power in saying those 2 words in that room, to those people, was a slow, satisfying burn. I pulled out the empty chair at the head of the table. The one meant for the evening's host. The one Karen had claimed without a thought. "Mind if I sit?" I asked, though I was already lowering myself into it. No one said a word. From my new vantage point, I could see every flicker of their expressions: disbelief, embarrassment, the dawning realization that they'd been wrong about me all along. "I thought you were still doing small marketing jobs," Jake finally said, as if his brain had only just caught up. I smiled. I was. Until I built something bigger. The waiter appeared with a fresh glass of wine for me, his tone respectful. "Here you are, Ms. West." Karen opened her mouth, then closed it again. I let the silence stretch, letting them sit with it. With me. With everything I had become in the years they'd written me off. I let them stew for a few minutes while the first course was served, seared scallops with citrus beurre blanc. The conversation around the table had shifted from easy laughter to cautious small talk, the kind you make when you're trying not to step on landmines. When the waiter stepped away, I folded my hands in my lap and looked at each of them in turn. "I know some of you might be wondering why I never said anything about my work." I began, my tone even but firm. "It's simple. I didn't need validation. I needed results." No one argued. Jake shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Karen reached for her wine glass like it might save her. "But here's the thing," I continued, leaning forward just enough to make sure every eye was on me. "I believe in using what we've been given to lift others up, if they're willing to put in the effort themselves." Karen finally spoke. "Are you offering to help us?" I smiled. "Maybe, but not without conditions." I started with Jake. "You've talked for years about starting your own construction business. I'll invest in your first project, but you're doing it legitimately. No shortcuts, no favors under the table. You'll have to prove every expense and every permit." He nodded slowly, surprise flickering in his eyes. Then, Aunt Linda. You've carried grudges for longer than I've been alive. Before I support your community fundraiser, I want you to make amends with the people you've hurt, starting with Mom. She deserves an apology. Her lips tightened, but she didn't protest. Finally, Karen. I took a slow sip of my wine before speaking. You once told me to be realistic. To settle. I'll give you a spot in my company's mentorship program, unpaid for the first 3 months. You'll start at the bottom, just like I did. If you make it through, you'll earn a permanent role. Her mouth opened, then closed again. These aren't negotiations, I said, sitting back. These are opportunities. Take them or leave them, but the days of me being underestimated are over. Silence again, but this time it felt different. Heavier. More respectful. I wasn't looking for gratitude. I wasn't even looking for an apology. I was simply reclaiming my place and making sure they understood it wasn't theirs to give or take away. In the weeks that followed, I saw small signs that my conditions hadn't been taken lightly. Jake sent me a photo of his first set of blueprints, the company name printed neatly at the top. Westwood Construction. He included a note. Permits approved. No shortcuts. Aunt Linda called my mother for the first time in over a decade. I wasn't there to hear the conversation, but Mom told me afterward, her voice trembling. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Even Karen showed up, not in heels and designer dresses, but in a plain blazer, clutching a notebook on her first day in the mentorship program. She didn't smile much, but she listened. That was enough for now. One late evening, long after the office had emptied, I sat by the window in my corner suite. The city lights glittered below, and the soft hum of my computer filled the quiet. I reached into the top drawer and pulled out my grandmother's gold pen. The engraving caught the light. Write your own story. I ran my thumb over the letters, feeling the same weight I had felt that night years ago at that family dinner. The sting of dismissal, the heat of determination. Only now the sting was gone. All that remained was the proof that I had done exactly what she told me to do. I thought about the empty chair at the head of that table, how easily someone had taken it without asking, and how easily I had taken it back. The truth was, I'd stopped caring whether I was invited to sit down, because I'd built something better than a seat. I'd built the table. And as I leaned back in my chair, looking out at the city I had claimed piece by piece, my voice was calm, certain, and maybe even a little amused. I didn't need their seat at the table, I murmured. I built the whole table myself.